A woman, fed up with her husband's infidelity through an online dating app, decides to become a serial killer, targeting all the single women in town. The movie opens with a news report about the murder of a 24-year-old graduate in her home. Meanwhile, a group of friends celebrates Eva, our protagonist, on her 30th birthday at a bar. Everyone cheers as she makes a wish and blows out the candles. Most of the ladies are in their early 30s and still single, except for Kelly, who is happily married. Although Eva is excited about turning 30, she laments her breakup with Jake, her boyfriend of 8 years. She reveals that she never focused on her own life during their relationship and now works as Kelly's assistant to make ends meet. Robin mentions a new dating app where singles can find their perfect match and get married. Anthony warns that looking for a partner online is dangerous, especially with reports of a serial killer targeting women after one-night stands. Robin dismisses this as a random event, insisting it's unlikely to happen in their neighborhood. Eva urges everyone to relax, reminding them it's her birthday and 8 months since her breakup. She's not ready for a relationship and wants to focus on herself. Later, at home, Eva listens to a podcast discussing the serial killer while browsing through old photo albums with Jake. As she contemplates deleting his contact, she hears footsteps on her porch and hides. A masked figure enters, and she prepares to attack with a vase, only to discover it's her sister, Valerie. Valerie warns her not to act recklessly, given the recent murders, and gives her a card for a security company to keep her home safe. Eva reminds her that she can call her ex, a cop, if needed. Valerie encourages her to forget about him, as he's now engaged to another woman, also a cop. Realizing she wasted her 20s on someone who moved on so quickly, Eva feels devastated and decides to take control of her life. She tells Valerie she doesn't need her help and kicks her out. Just then, Robin arrives and suggests they try the dating app to meet some handsome guys. Dismissing the news about the killer, Eva creates a profile with Robin's help. After hours of swiping, she matches with a handsome man named Mitch and they agree to meet. On her way, she listens to the podcast, which reveals that the killer, dubbed the Swipe Right Killer, leaves no fingerprints or clues at the crime scenes. At the bar, Eva is excited to meet Mitch, but she's taken aback when she learns he has no fingerprints. She asks him about it and he explains that he's a chef and gets a lot burned that resulted in losing his prints. Eva feels sorry and apologizes, as they lean in for a kiss, but Valerie interrupts, revealing she installed a tracking device on Eva's phone out of fear for her safety. Frustrated, Eva feels treated like a child and decides to take Mitch home with her. They end up sleeping together, but afterward, she asks him to leave, not wanting a first date to turn into a sleepover. Just then, she receives a text from Kyle, an old school friend, saying he's back in town and they should hang out. The next morning the security installer, Norman, comes in to install and upgrade her security system. Eva shares her concern for the recent killings, which Norman thinks is good for business, since the rate of people asking for security systems in their homes has suddenly skyrocketed. He also shares that he takes night classes in forensics, hoping to become a medical examiner. This doesn't sit well with Eva because, according to the podcast, the Swipe Right Killer is rumored to be in forensics due to his perfect trail removal, leaving no traces after taking out his victims. However, she doesn't let the thought cloud her judgment. After the installation, Norman reveals that he finds her attractive and would love to go on a date with her. She agrees, and they decide it would be on the next Thursday. While at work in her friend's photo studio, she keeps listening to the podcast, where they share how the serial killer engaged with his victims and the kinds of things he leaves behind, according to police investigations. At that moment, Kelly walks out with a wedding dress, asking Eva if her date last night was husband material, saying she would look great in a wedding dress. Eva thinks it's weird to assume someone is husband material after hanging out for just one night. She also tells Kelly how attractive she finds the security guy, but Kelly warns her that it's a bad idea to hang out with such people. Afterward, she reveals that she got a message from Kyle, an old schoolmate. He's in town and wants them to hang out that evening. Kelly thinks this is a good match and encourages her to go for it, but makes sure she opens her mind to the idea of marriage and not just to open her legs. That evening, she's excited to finally meet Kyle, who keeps talking about his job as a veterinarian. He tries his best to impress Eva, but it definitely doesn't work. He then tries to invite her to spend the night at his place. Eva recalls her friend Kelly telling her not to engage with anyone, so she simply declines. During the friends hangout, Eva shares her dating experiences so far and reveals to her friends the role each man plays in her life. Kelly thinks she's taking it too far by hanging out with men and not deciding to be with one, like she did. They argue about it, and later, they get a notification on their phones about another murder by the serial killer. Although this time, the police have uncovered some crucial evidence that could help find the person. In the report, it stated that the killer wears a size 10 shoe and normally engages his victims with rosé wine. With this clue, Eva decides to find out if any of the men happen to be the swipe right killer. That same night, she hangs out with Mitch, who insists on preparing dinner. Eva doesn't want all that romantic stuff and wants to get straight down to business. After a sweet moment, Eva decides to check his shoe size and is shocked to discover he wears a size 10. She quickly tells Mitch she'd be heading home, seeing him wielding a knife. Mitch, however, doesn't understand her sudden mood swing and tells her it would break his heart if she thinks of him as just a sex toy. Eva denies that and tells him it was something else, feeling fortunate to leave the house in one piece. She immediately texts her friends that Mitch might be the serial killer. On the next date with Kyle, she's surprised to see the whole picnic setup, and she admires Kyle as a really nice guy. At that moment, a street performer keeps interrupting the moment with his loud music. Unable to enjoy the moment, Kyle grabs the guitar and flings it across, smashing it in the process. Using the distraction, Eva quickly checks his foot size, and it's also a size 10. Coupled with the sudden outburst of anger, this makes Eva feel uncomfortable, and she calls off the date. On her way home through a shady neighborhood, a figure starts trailing her. When she notices, she gets scared and starts running, causing the figure to chase after her. She manages to bump into Kelly, and the shady figure reveals he only followed her because he intends to return the AirPod he found on the ground. When she asks Kelly what she was doing in her house, she reveals that she was only looking out for her while listening to the usual podcast. In her thoughts, Eva keeps imagining who among the 3 men she has met so far could probably be the serial killer. At that moment, the security guy, Norman, comes for the final installation of the security alarm and also for the promised date. That evening they get to hang out and spend a good time together. As they talk, Norman suddenly receives a text from his sister, so he has to quickly rush out to attend to her. This sparks some concern in Eva's mind because Norman has never mentioned that he has a sister. So, she tells Robin to join her so they can tail Norman and find out what he's up to. They arrive at the location, seeing Norman's shadowy figure handling something. They sense that maybe he's the killer and is taking out another victim. After a while, he comes out with a trash bag, and Eva concludes that maybe it contains a torso. Robin decides they should call the police, but Eva tells her to hold on and wait for him to leave so they can carry out their own investigation first. Arriving at the apartment, Eva manages to find the keys, and they make it inside, only to find a lady in a wheelchair, disappointed that they were wrong this whole time. They lie, saying that they are her new neighbors and that they just came to check up on her and see if she's fine. Immediately the duo shamefully leaves the house. Eva receives a call from Norman, asking her if they could still finish what they started, and she agrees to meet up at his house. There, Norman apologizes for how he left her, revealing that after an incident when he was young, they lost their parents, which left his sister crippled. He's been the one taking care of her and panics anytime she asks for help. As they were about to get intimate, Eva notices a high heel of another lady in his room. Norman reveals that the shoe belongs to his sister. Eva thinks he's lying because his sister is in a wheelchair and doesn't think she wears such shoes. This makes Norman angry and curious at the same time how she knew her sister was in a wheelchair. The conversation is becoming provocative. Norman makes the hard decision to ask her to leave. Outside, she browses and finds out that his shoe size is 10, and at that moment, her bag falls to the ground. A generous lady sees this and decides to help. The next morning, while listening to the Mark My Murder podcast, they report that there's a new victim, and the description of the lady matches that of the woman she encountered last night. She calls her sister to let her know that she's found the killer and it's Norman because the lady she saw last night was her neighbor and now she's dead. Valerie shares her own report and research so far on Norman, like the break-in that cost the lives of his parents and left his sister crippled, suggesting that it's a normal serial killer origin story. Valerie tells her it's the right time to report the incident to the police and also an opportunity to meet with his ex. At the police station, while waiting, she receives a video message from Kyle, who apologizes for the way he behaved on their last date, revealing he bought a brand new guitar for the guy and hopes this changes the way she sees him. However, Eva isn't really concerned and not happy that she has to report to his ex about the serial killer, but does so anyway. After a brief summary of her encounter with Norman, Jake tells her that with everything she's said so far, it lacks any evidence for them to arrest Norman. Besides, the other ladies around the corner also came with the same report and think that they are dating the serial killer. Determined to put Norman down, Eva decides to go back to Norman's apartment to find any fingerprints or evidence that might lead to his capture. Norman is happy to see her and begins to apologize to her for last night. However, she lies, saying she lost her AirPod and was there to look for it. By chance, she manages to grab enough evidence, which she returns to Jake. Jake warns her that since she's gotten all the evidence, she has to stay away from her house in case the serial killer comes looking for her. She calls her sister, who's busy on her report and doesn't notice her phone ringing, so she tries calling all of her friends, but no one is answering. Left with one last lifeline, she calls Kyle to host her for the night, which he gladly accepts. After they chat a little, she decides that she needs to bathe, and Kyle directs her to the room. Upon arriving there, she notices that Kyle also wears a size 10, but shrugs it off since she's already sure that Norman is the serial killer and texts her best friend Kelly the house address, asking her to come pick her up. At that moment, Valerie calls everyone to inform them about her findings, concluding that Kyle is the serial killer. She says that she didn't run a background check on him because they knew Kyle from high school, but after some digging, she's able to find that Kyle has been lying all this while and has multiple charges of assault. He might actually be the killer, and Eva is in danger. At that moment, Kyle walks up behind her and snatches her phone, lamenting how he's the nicest guy and never got to sleep with her. He did everything right, and yet all the girls never like a nice guy, always going for the ones that would eventually break their hearts. Eva manages to hit his groin and is about to escape the house, but again gets caught by Kyle. Eva apologizes for breaking his heart, but that doesn't mean she has to die, not like the other girls he's been killing. Kyle is surprised upon hearing this, and at that moment, Kelly sneaks up from behind and stabs Kyle, who falls to the ground in pain. Kelly pretends she just saved her best friend and tells her she should wait in the car so she can clean up the crime scene. Eva gets to the car, but is still in shock about what just happened when she begins to hear a lot of notifications from different phones. Upon opening the car's compartment, she's shocked to find a lot of phones with dating profiles. She takes one of the phones to Kelly and asks her what she's doing with all these phones and messages from the dating app. Kelly reveals that she's been the serial killer all along. It started when she found her husband cheating with a lady he just met on the dating app. After the meet, she couldn't handle the heartbreak and killed the lady. She was going to frame her cheating husband for all the killings, but recently he apologized for his infidelity. Now, seeing Kyle, it's a good opportunity to frame him as the serial killer. Eva can't believe the shocking revelation from her best friend and thinks she's insane. She tries to escape and call the police, but gets blocked by Kelly, who tries to stab her to death. Eva manages to grab hold of a heel, which she uses as defense, and knocks Kelly unconscious. The police soon arrive, and Jake is surprised that she managed to find the actual serial killer. He asks if they could get back together, revealing that his old girlfriend dumped him. Eva refuses, saying she never goes back to her vomit. Afterwards, she goes to Norman and apologizes for the way she treated him, begging for his forgiveness, which he accepts. They get back together as a couple and the movie ends. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more.